The only real hope and change you'll ever get is from God. It's going to come from the Lord, or it's not going to come at all. It's going to come when you admit that you can't do it and that you've got to have His help.
The Lord knows that when nothing happens in your life, that's when you start becoming bored, too complacent. When a person becomes complacent, they begin to complain internally. They're no longer satisfied. When you go through some sort of opposition, you begin to look over, reevaluate things, prioritize things. By the way, which you cannot do unless you face adversity. You cannot correctly prioritize anything until you go through something. In my experience, every time it was required of me to prioritize things, something would happen. And in those moments, I would see everything differently. And I do cherish those moments. See, I realize that without adversity, you're blind in a lot of areas. But with adversity, you begin to reestablish what's important, what's not, what's priority, what's not. Through adversities, you begin to see the truth of everything around you. And essentially, you begin to reprioritize everything. Now, the Lord does this for me every time it's needed, because I don't get sick. I just don't get sick. I have injuries, yes, but I don't get sick. So for me to even be in this predicament is quite revealing. That means opposition is coming. That means priorities must be put in place. And I, for one, am thankful. That's why I don't like people feeling sorry. You know how people feel sorry for another person? Don't forget that. You wouldn't go through anything unless the Lord allows you to go through something, correct? You wouldn't be able to conduct anything unless the Lord empowers you to conduct something. We've got to finally get this so that we stop thinking about coincidences and things of that nature. I'm telling you, your life would be far richer, much more accurate, if people could just understand that everything that transpires in your life is your Father's doings. He will allow or disallow. Nothing accidentally happens to any believer. It doesn't work that way. No, it's purposed. And it's important that we find out that purpose by His Word, not by theory, not by speculation, but by His Word. Isn't that right? That's why He said, don't think it's strange when you go through fiery trials. He enriches our lives. A lot of people, they don't like His methods. I do, because I see what they develop within all of us. They are truly ingenious, and they never falter. Let's continue with this. So China's doing their thing, right? They really are trying to get us going. In fact, this election year is going to bring out every foul bird, every foul creature you can think of. It is. Every nation wants to maximize off this election. But, guys, you got to watch what you believe. You're going to be careful of what you believe. You do not want to be those who believe or who have confidence in some dark figure that you did not know was dark. And how many times in life did we think somebody was full of light, but it turned out they were full of darkness? All of us have been fooled in that degree, right? That way. There are elements or things involved. We're going to capitalize off the changes that are taking place in the USA and around the world. Things will become distressful for a lot of people, not for you, but for a lot of people. And they're gonna maximize off that. You really have to get yourselves ready to have an understanding that you can't change a person's mind. You may represent the truth. You can't force someone to accept the truth. Having said that, the border issue, this border problem. You know what they're doing now, guys, don't you, in the border problem? They're taking all the folks who are having that get-together down there, right? The Border Patrol is moving everybody from one part where all these people were to muster. They're taking them from that part to another part of Texas where they won't be seen by the masses. But the question I have for everybody is this, because this is going to be one of the points of contention for the entire country. Is it a foul thing to do to shut the borders? Is it terrible to shut the borders? Is it terrible to send people back home again? The Lord has given us a way, but for the life of us, we can't follow it. We just won't follow it. The Lord desired of us, right, in every decision that we make, He wanted us to be inclusive. You know, everybody's 2 cents, so to speak, being thought about, that they can come to a consensus. The problem is, people in this day and age, they're disconnected from what cruelty is. They don't know what cruelty is. A lot of folks will say, well, you know, if you turn those migrants back and they have a lot of situations, that's just wrong, right? And still the other folks, they just don't want, well, let's go ahead and face it. Some people don't want anybody in this nation, and some people just go along with what's happening. But for the most part, the people who have dealt with consequences of very bad people that have come across the border, they see those who immigrate as a type of person. But is it cruel to shut the borders? Is that a cruelty? It is in the respect if you do it out of some sort of prejudice, race, something like that. In my opinion, it's cruel. It is very cruel to have someone think that they can enter into your country, to travel all that way, to give up everything they had, any type of stability they had, only to reach the border to be turned away. That is cruel. See, wouldn't it be better if somebody gave out a message and said, nobody's coming into the border in the USA? That way people would not falsely have this false dream of coming to the USA. If somebody would just, on the news, with a microphone, something, and say, hey, don't come to the USA border because you won't get in. If people knew that up front, they would come up with alternatives. But that's not what they're saying. The message is confused. In every case, it is confused. And some people are told they can get into the country. And that's a false promise. What cruelty is it? I mean, it's very cruel to have an entire family leave the security of where they are to go to an unknown place only to be turned around. And where are they going to go back to? Because they spend all their money to get there, which means they have nothing. That's cruel. That's cruel. You know, when the Bible says, the Lord teaches us, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything in between is from the evil one. Do you guys know that? Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything in between is from the evil one. And the reason for that is when you're not absolute about things, you can give false hopes. You can give false promises. When you sit there and say, well, you know, possibly, maybe, there could be, that will bait a person. And in their minds, they can develop whatever they want to, only to be turned around when they get there. That's very cruel. So it is cruel for these politicians not to have a clear message every single day. Because if you've never heard them say that, neither have those immigrants who desire to come up to the USA. Because that's terrible, isn't it? And see, for me, it's heartbreaking for me. Can you imagine taking your family to, you're going to a country, you've got all these dreams and everything else because someone told you that, hey, you can get in there. Don't worry about what anybody says. You can start a new life for your family. Then when you get there, the answer is no. Can you imagine how heartbreaking that would be? That's a hardship. People die when they're told they can't enter because someone who is evil failed to tell them. Chances are you cannot enter. If you can go into any news outlet and you will not hear a clear answer, you will not. And that's very sad. In my opinion, all of them should stand up and make a very clear statement that if you come to this border, you will not get in. And let the people know that you're going to be stuck at the border potentially for years before you're even processed. And stop giving people false promises. I have a gripe with the Democrats about that because they will not tell people forwardly, just openly that, hey, you can't come into the border like that. And you put your family under great risk if you do that. They will not for the life of them say no. And what was the principle from the Lord? Yeah, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything in between is from the evil one. My gripe with the Democrats in that specific context is that they will not say yes or no. They won't. They keep saying maybe. That's what they keep saying. Maybe. They won't say yes or no. And in my opinion, they should say no. Absolutely not. That's why we have a crisis at the border. And that small, inconcise thing is causing a breakdown within the USA. Isn't that terrible? So essentially, they have allowed, because they are not concise in what they're saying, they have allowed greater divisions within the USA. And it ultimately costs lives. It costs lives. That's why I do not lean to stories about the border, with the drugs and stuff. More drugs come through other parts than at any time in Texas. But that's not the issue. The issue is they keep killing people. Christians, unfortunately, they probably have the right answer to give. They're just not positioned to give that answer. That means you guys are not positioned to tell the world, don't come to the border. And you should be positioned. If anybody's going to speak truth in this nation, it ought to be you. Maybe that's why nobody else can speak truth. Maybe the Lord is waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God, you, to finally stand up and to speak his truth. God's truth heals, repairs, doesn't it? Man's truth is skeptical at best. Anyway, that's the issue with that. So expect it to continue. So long as they will not give a clear yes or no. You're going to have issues at the border. There is no resolving it. And to date, it has not been resolved. Because no one will say yay or nay. Isn't that something? That's a principle. That's a biblical principle that you have witnessed all your life, but it has not failed. Isn't that something? We have some issues we have to cover today. I believe we're right at the door of them too. I believe that a few things are about to take place. I'm really not concerned in who believes it or not. I am concerned about putting it out there so that if in the event it does take place, you'll at least know that your Father in heaven, he already knows about the issue. That will give you a greater comfort than most. But if you don't know what your Father's doing and something takes place, and you didn't know it was from him, that's when you begin to question things. That puts you in a vulnerable state. If you knew that in your life every bad happening was indeed the Lord's design, you wouldn't have a problem with those bad happenings. You would seek knowledge and wisdom out of those bad happenings. But when nobody tells you that your life is preordained, when you really do believe that things are happenstance, then you also believe that your life is at risk every single day. See, if you thought that there was no divine order to your life is going to be by chance. You can't have great security in life if you think it's by chance. That means you're going to be paranoid. You're going to have schizophrenia of the worst type. You're going to think everybody's out to get you. You're going to have no stability. And that will spread from person to person. Satan would just love that. The border issue, you guys knew that was coming. And COT, you knew that was coming. Now, I'm not bragging by any means. I'm just telling you that somehow the Lord allows this place to know things. So it's of no big surprise when it takes place. It is of no big surprise. And we should be able to stand pretty firm on the Word of God with every happening. You think 2024 is not going to be the most impactful year of just about every single year people have been living it? Somebody said, Mike, the Houthis say they will cut communication wires underwater. They can, and they will try. They're not whistling Dixie. You know that, right? Do you guys understand that in our armed services, we have people who were born here in the USA, hear me on this, who have developed strong convictions towards Islam. Now, think of a Caucasian person who was born in America, who has Caucasian parents, and their parents before them are Caucasian, who has roots in the founders. But then this Caucasian sailor bends or bows to Islam. Let's say you have two American Caucasian pilots, Caucasian now, who in their heart of hearts, they worship Allah. In their heart of hearts, they embrace everything of Islam. In their heart of hearts, they'll do anything to support Islam. Now, we're not talking about Middle Eastern people. We're not talking about people with roots in the Middle East. Nope, we're talking about Caucasians with family genes only from America, right? This is the situation we're facing. And so you have people over here who are trained in very skilled areas, who then at some point take that training and begin to train others in the Middle East. And others besides them, they recruit people into Islam. Do you not know that you can't tell who's loyal to Islam by skin color anymore? You can't tell that. So for a person's paradigm, this is, well, there are no Middle Eastern people here. That makes this okay. No, it isn't. Because now you're having people over here of all different colors who are loyal to Islam. They are not loyal to anything else but Islam, and they support the Middle East. And they do not support Israel. They support actions against Israel. And they're over here. These people are officers, Delta operators, right? They're people in high positions. Very difficult to vet someone's faith, isn't it? It's very difficult. We're in a very different position here in the USA. It used to be you could identify people pretty much by their, based on their loyalties, by how they looked. You can't do that anymore. And it's becoming quite dangerous. That means you're going to have people, especially with the elections, you're going to have people who hate America with the Democrats. You're going to have people who hate America with the Republicans. They're going to do everything they can to make you fight amongst yourselves, to declare their curses. And it's coming. So now skin color doesn't tell anything. And it's, identification is very difficult these days. Very difficult. One person, they know for a fact, that trained about, it's about 400 different officers of policy setters. So think about that. Who gets a hold of U.S. military officers and totally changes, sit there and change what they believe in to the point where they begin to be very charismatic and blood-all embracing of Islam here in the USA. And they continue to work in high areas because nobody knows. We are in very different times. They are not like they used to be. And those different times are going to come to a head in 2024. You guys have a piece of advice. When you have something to do for righteousness' sake, right? Let nothing get in your way. That's up to you. You can give in to your conditions. You can make an excuse not to go forward with what you're given. Or you can press through. And I'll tell you something I know that nobody can take away from me. When you press through all conditions, well, that's when your Father heals. That's when he does the impossible, right? He really does. That's when he does the absolute impossible. He'll do it every single time. When you continue to press, he'll do it every single time. I strongly believe that, and nobody can deplete my faith in that line of thinking. I've undergone too many times when I shouldn't have been able to do things. And the conditions totally changed because of Most High. So do that yourselves, because it will seem like there are too many situations that will cause you to just fold, right? Don't fold, so you can be a witness to how your Father delivers. Be genuine about it. You don't have to go into doing something and say, well, I know God will heal me and this, that, and the other. No, don't have that mindset. Just have a mindset of servitude. That's all. Not some bold mindset that God will fix everything, right? No, just go forward in truth and in love for him and watch what he does. Be a witness to what he does, because the more you're a witness to his deliverance, the less you're going to be shaken in times to come. Someone said, Michael, do you think they're going to crash the financial system this weekend? No, I do not. The reason why I don't think so is because, well, there are several reasons why I don't think so. So let's look at that real quick. I'm going to give you guys some mindset, something I've noticed over time. Since I was small, a little fella, things have happened to the financial system. And the very things that did happen, when they did happen, they were inconvenient for just about everybody. Not just a few. The Great Depression, for example. There were quite a few people of power that didn't make it through the Great Depression. They didn't. It was something that it was almost like they couldn't control it. Any type of financial crash is going to be caused by the people. The stock markets, that's ran by faith. And what I mean by that, if people believe things are going to be better, they start, put money in stocks and the economy goes up. If people think that things are going to get bad, they pull their money out. Stocks plummet. So it's a faith-based system. Stocks and bonds, ultimately, they back the power, right? They show a snapshot of the power of a nation, so on and so forth. But the people control that. So whatever you think, the investor, whatever you think, that's what's going to happen. You guys are aware of that, right? That when you think some things are going to go sour, you will start pulling your money out of certain places, thus causing a crash. Only when the people believe that all is for nothing will they start taking the money out. And people cause a crash. People do that. Remember that. That's why every single forecast of a financial crash has failed. It failed. It did. It failed. It failed because the people weren't thinking the same way that, the trends were going or something like that. Just remember that. You'll see. The people control that. Cryptocurrency is the same thing. If they get scared enough, they'll start pulling their money out of cryptocurrency, and that's when it falters. That's when it goes down. It'll go right back up again. It does. People do that. And it's important that people do that because they gauge how the people believe in things based on it. You guys would be surprised how these people operate. Just like we operate by faith, they operate by luck and fortune. And let me explain that. If, for example, say a person was fortunate enough to make, 5 decisions that led them to wealth. Now, these people in the system are going to look at you like somehow you have favor with the God of the earth. This is how they look at you. And they will utilize you to get favor themselves from the God of this earth, because ultimately they want favor from the God of this earth. They use you as a guinea pig to determine if where that favor is. That's why you can see a star, that propped up one year. The next year, they totally go downhill. And then you start looking into that actor, music artist, or whoever it is. And there was a series of unfortunate things that took place that nobody caused. It was just one of those happenstance things. And when that happens, everybody backs away from it because they think you're out of favor with the God of this world. That's how they operate. And that's it. That's why they seem to worship each other so much, because they want favor with the God of this earth. They're also primarily concerned about saving their own flesh. So there we are. That's why I don't believe any financial collapse is going to happen this weekend. I don't believe that. You will know because the people of the USA will begin to get a bit nervous about finances when that happens. You're going to hear that outright. And that's when you start making your decisions. It'll be like dominoes falling. And you'll see it. Because many people will have the idea, well, something is not right. I better get my money out of the bank, or I better get my money out of this stock or that stock. And every single time that happens, that's when things falter. If that doesn't happen, nothing falters. Now you understand. And listen, believe it or not, understanding that system is everything, right? That puts you ahead of the curve. So you're not guessing. You will then know how that mechanism works. How many folks are in California? California has a problem. You guys aware of that? They have a problem. They're getting far too much moisture. I know what they say the causes are. It doesn't matter what they name it. What matters is that you have atmospheric conditions that are persistent and they're forming. These large USA-wide storms are, and they're just beginning. They really have no strength. We're in the colder months. In the colder months, storms have no power whatsoever. So just think about that. Think about the severity and the strength of these storms. During the winter months, when storms have absolutely no energy, what's going to happen when everything warms up? I want you guys to be aware of that, because warmth brings energy. Warmth does, not cold. When it's cold, you're seeing, minimal effects. Can you imagine what's going to happen this summer? If they had tornadoes, and they did in the wintertime, thunderstorms in the wintertime, thunder, snow, everything else, high winds, you just name it. It was like all seasons wrapped up into one. If all that happened in the wintertime, what do you think is going to happen when the energy hits these systems and these big cumulonimbus cells begin to form? What then? Think of the rain totals, 7.5 inches, 13 inches rain total in a time where energy is at its minimal, the winter times. What's going to happen when it warms up everywhere? If they normally the rule of thumb is, if you have, say for example, you had 5 inches of rain in the wintertime at any given location within the USA, then in the summertime, you're going to have twice that amount, if not 3 times that amount in the summertime. Because for the most part, during the winters when they were normal, you may have had 1.5 inches of rain or 2 inches of rain, right? This time we've had, 7 inches, 13 inches. Can you imagine what's going to happen during the summer times when the energy is really available for these storms? Weather will become a direct enemy of mankind. It will. And it's so funny because somebody, I guess when you have storms like that, people say HARP. Why in the world would HARP destroy its own facilities? Do you guys know a snowstorm just destroyed one of those HARP antenna arrays? So terrible. We're going to have to go over that, guys, because you got people in COT who work with those facilities. They know exactly what HARP is and when it's not. And it's good that people not be fooled as to what exists, what capabilities people have, and so on and so forth. HARP doesn't work too well. It doesn't work too well at all. There's another system that has nothing to do with HARP that nobody talks about. That's the system you need to think about. And we're going to go over that system because that system is that's a legitimate system. Weather control and weather controlling techniques started in World War II. That's when they started World War II. To give cloud cover, for example, to ships and things of that nature. HARP was utilized to do that. That's when it was used. Most people don't really understand that. Mike's the ice shelf in Antarctica. Yes, parts of it have broken off, actually. There are parts that have broken off already. They pulled back some of the underwater stations that were down there monitoring the melt of the ice because the waters are far too warm. This summer, I suspect they're going to have to pull everything back. And if it does break off, it's going to displace water levels big time. And when that happens, you're going to have a water rise. Without tsunamis or anything else, you're just simply going to have a water rise on every single coastline. We will have a water event. Nothing's going to stop that. I have a firm belief in that. I can see it slowly but surely working its way up to that. We talked about a water event back in 2007, before most of this stuff was happening. And it was hard to believe at that time. But you're starting to see it more and more. It will take place in all coastal cities. We're going to be in trouble because of that. That will also cause a weight displacement event, which means magma is going to be squeezed to come out of areas that normally wouldn't erupt. A displacement of water. What follows that are multiple volcanic vents opening up. So you can look for that too. We'll undergo that too. This summer is going to be one of those telltale years, guys. If we survive this summer, if the flood events and the clay rain, I'm going to call it clay rain, if we can survive all of that and the fog and the chemical detections that will take place on the East Coast and some of the precautions that will take place on the West Coast, right? If we survive all of that, then we can expect drastic changes in the weather come this winter coming up. And that will coincide with bad issues in the heavens. To my understanding, we have some intersections taking place in the heavens this year, 2024. And the closer we get to those, of course, the more information people are going to have. But coordinates they should be of high confidence in April. There should be a high confidence in coordinates, which means a person with a telescope should be able to take that telescope and begin to see things based off coordinates, right? Things don't match other things that move in the heavens. They should be able to see something brand new. So the higher the confidence in those coordinates, the closer we get to that time, the more, you guys will have a chance to observe it yourselves. Just make sure you don't, make up some narrative when you do see it, because that's going to be a very different time. Always expect people to embellish what it really is. And that's unfortunate because that normally happens. You have people out there that have very convincing speech, and if you listen to them, to what they say, you'll believe every word that comes out of their mouth because it will sound plausible, but it may not be true. I would encourage everybody to, as you get information, take your time. Certainly do pray about it, right? Let the Lord guide you into truth. Let him guide you. Science is not going to work out too well. People are going to see an evil constellation. That's what I keep calling it. Which means a constellation that has long been gone is coming back again. And it only comes back during the times of decimations of the earth, like a cosmic calendar. So when that happens, most are going to be, they're not going to have an answer for that. They're going to come up with one quick, but they won't have an answer for that from the onset. So keep that in mind. Somebody said, what's going to happen April 8th? I have no idea. Normally when I post dates, guys, I just don't operate on a whim, which is why those dates, they always intersect with happenings, right? And I didn't post any after a few events because people were starting to write in emails of the wrong type. You get a date, you get 3 or 4 dates right, and then people start writing in, wanting you to speak something over them or something like that. That's not what I put those dates up there for. That's not to edify me or anybody else. That's so that people can be informed of things in the heavens. Not to do that flesh worship thing. And so I didn't put any up there. Hopefully people would say, well, there are no dates, It's just like everybody else. That's right. It's what you need to think. Because any dates that go in there are not for popularity, right? That's information. When things happen on those dates, it's information in the hopes that you guys will see that it's just not hogwash there. There's an impossible subject we have to discuss that you guys will not believe right now if I began to discuss them. You have to have demonstration before you can actually start believing them. And there we are. Very difficult to believe. Yeah, well, they had some preempts last night. You guys know about the missile attacks last night, right? You guys know about that? Maybe not. It's going to continue to go forward. It's going to continue to happen. As the United States is destroying things, they're the ones that are doing the preempts. And they started taking place last night. That's why I kind of threw that out there a few days ago and just left it alone. News media, they were going to cover it anyway. Maybe not everywhere, but they did cover it. There's a war beginning, and it's about to get a whole lot worse. It really is. That was a preemptive strike, to be exact. And those preemptive strikes, more than one, took place yesterday. They're going to be taking place tonight. They're going to take place Tuesday. They're going to start consuming areas. They are. Things are not as controlled as you would think. They're not. Traders are everywhere because people are greedy and they like money. A lot of people can be bought. Somebody said, why did the U.S. tell them exactly when we were going to attack? Well, they did to a degree, but in other degrees they did not. They always do that when they have operatives in that area. You cannot make contact with an operative. You can't do that. And whatever that operative knows, he's going to have to know through media. So when they make a blatant comment like that, it seems like they're warning everybody there to go take off. They're talking to those operatives. That's what they're doing. So that the operatives are out of there. They do that with commercials also. When you see some of these commercials that pop up, you never see them again. Same thing happens. They never make contact with operatives out there. Kind of like the Mossad. You guys know about the Mossad, right? A Mossad operative, for example, say they are Iranian. They live in Iran, and they are an Iranian, and they have Iranian families out there, right? Now, it's still a Mossad operation. They just use Iran and their citizenship in Iran to report back to Israel. They never have contact directly with Israel, and nobody from Israel can ever contact them either. So they operate nations like that in the USA, in all nations, and they contact them through media. Civilians are sometimes gullible. Civilians will always think of their own narrative to things, and they count on that to communicate with operatives. Some people figure that out sometimes, but that's how they communicate. There's been a few movies that have repetitive dates in them. Those movies mark the date of the current conflict that's happening in the Middle East right now perfectly. And that's, that's beyond happenstance. But that's what they do. Somebody says, will there be martial law soon? I don't think so. I think that what we're about to face is going to be far different. They muddied up the waters with martial law. Who would the military put under martial law? That will cause a premature breakaway of a lot of citizens of the USA. Waters are coming for Arizona. Floods and bugs. Do you guys know a bug army is an army that nobody can defeat? Are you guys aware of that? Do you realize with these hotter temperatures that bugs are going to begin to surface? That we can't combat bugs, can we? Remember this statement. God will use the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. He'll do it every time. Something, it's one thing to prepare for an army who's advanced and they have similar weaponry than you do, but who could fight a spider assault? Who could fight a flea assault? Who could fight a plague of flies? Who could do that? Wouldn't that be awful? Think about that. Somebody say, can martial law stop the election? Not necessarily martial law. Whatever institutes martial law, whatever reason demands that, that could be the reason to stall elections. It could be. But we would have to be in an international fight. We would. But in truth, I wouldn't worry about martial law just yet. I would worry about how you guys can be used from the enemy. I would worry about that. Be careful not to let anybody make you form an opinion about somebody else. Be careful of that. This election year is going to make or break. It's going to make or break how things operate from that time forward. Somebody said, why did Trump say it will be over by the end of February? Well, hear me out on this, folks. I want you guys to put on your thinking caps. What is Donald Trump? Is he a man or is he a deity? Which one is he? He's a man, right? Men make comments a lot, don't they? Before Joe Biden was elected, President Trump made comments. They did not come to pass. It was comments, right? Trump is a off-the-hip type person anyway. And he just made a comment. He's not making divine comments. People have to be careful not to prop men up in positions of divinity. They got to not do that. A lot of people propped Trump up in a place of worship. They got to be careful not to do that. Right? They may like him, yes. He may speak for them, yes, but they cannot worship him. You know what the Father will do to a person who's worshipped in this land? The Father will remove that person. The Father will. He will remove that person. You know how I know that? Because he's done that historically. When people start to worship men, God removes that person that was worshipped. He will. So when it comes to statements being made, there were other statements were made. Other statements that, nothing came to pass in them. People make statements. People have suggestive ideas. So see them as such. Okay. Now, if a person is an ambassador to Christ, and that person is devout towards Christ, then hear that person in that capacity. Don't worship him either, but hear that person in that capacity. When a person is of the world, and they seek to establish things in the world, then hear them as such for doing things in the world. But make a distinction between divinity and humanity. Never put those two together. Because if you respect Trump, then you will not deify. We know what will happen to any deified person from the Most High. If the populace deifies him, his end position is not going to be so good. Okay? Be an advocate for people like that. Cover them with prayers, but don't worship them. Don't do that. Somebody says, Mike, do you believe God is using Trump? I believe God uses everybody that is popular. That's what I believe. He's not just, he's using Biden too. That's very clear. He's using Trump, Biden. He's using just about anything that will capture, because it deals with you. And he already promised that if it deals with you, he's going to be involved with it. Do I respect one over the other? Listen, I'm spoiled to a degree because I know certain things from behind the curtain. Okay? Nobody has to be presented to me for me to know them. I know them in different lights. I never share that with people. That's for me. That's mine. Right? I pray for people all the time. But I don't think of one over the other either. I don't do that. See, the Lord told us something. Let me tell you what the Lord said. You know what happens when the Lord is with someone? What did he say? What did the Lord say when the Lord is with someone? What did he say? What did he say would happen? He said that everything they would touch would be a blessing. That's what the Lord said. Do you guys hear me? When the Lord is truly with someone, everything they touch will be a blessing. Now, you can't say that of these men out there, can you? Now, God can use them, but they're not holy men. That's not what they are. Of course, God is going to use them because you're involved. But when God blesses a person, everything they touch is blessed, not cursed. And when somebody is blessed like that, foul stuff doesn't come out of their mouths. These are just men. I don't care who it is. When a person has guile in their mouth, God has already told us that they're just men. Pray for them. Don't worship them. Never do that. There are far too many people looking for someone to follow. Follow Christ. Don't follow men because you do yourself a disservice by doing so. Not to mention, you're the ones that make the change, not them. Do you guys know presidents do not run the show? I hope you guys know that. When Trump was in office, why did he not build the wall? Somebody answer that. We know he wanted to build the wall. Why couldn't he do it? Because he only has executive authority. And executive authority is not the authority. See, a president can pass executive orders. Executive orders have minimal impact upon the people. Congressional papers have long-standing impacts upon the people. It is congressional authority you ought to be looking at, that you ought to demand things of, not the president. The president is just an elected spokesperson. He speaks for a congressional chunk, is what he does. But executive authority can only do certain things, right? It's just like war. A president can send the Marines to do something, but they cannot send the Army. Did you know that? It takes congressional approval to send the Army. They can send the Marines, and even that is limited in scope, but they can send the Marines. Marines are far tinier than that of the Army. Those people in Congress, they've been skating through everything, having you look at the precedents, and nothing changes. When Trump got into office, I looked at a list of what he was able to accomplish and what he was not able to accomplish. Same thing with Bill Clinton. Same thing with Obama. It's the exact same thing. They were only able to change things based on executive order. They tried to talk people into, doing specific things, and it did not work because they only have executive authority. Congress was unwilling to grant certain things, right? And that's how everything is set up, and a lot of people don't know that. There's no way in the world a president is going to be a dictator. Not with Congress in power unless somebody comes up with a way to suspend the powers of Congress and take that power onto themselves if that ever happens. Whoever does that is a very bad person, not a good person. Somebody said, but my Congress is controlled by big tech. Well, they have influences, yes. They have their intertwinings, but nevertheless, that's the way it is. Presidents have no sway or influence on that. Presidents just make speeches and make people believe in certain things that are typed out for them. Think about it. Look at what's been happening all this time. And it's so sad because they have people believing that presidents can do this and can do that. But all they have to do is look at the track record of what's actually been done, and they find out presidents have not done too much. But Congress has done everything. Congress has warped just about everything. That's why you have those who are fighting in Congress against congressional members. It's very difficult for them to get support. Very difficult. You have to see it for what it is. Did you guys read the executive order of Biden? Did you read that executive order versus the congressional decision? See, you have to extract that, pull that out. We could do that, and then you would see the whole thing. I encourage you to do that yourselves. Sometimes a president can say something and even pass an executive order that does absolutely nothing. Do you know that? Now, there's no executive order that can override congressional powers, just so you know that. And when you're dealing with foreign states, right? When you're dealing with foreign states, congressional power is going to be the standing authority, not the president's power. His is just an opinion that can sway people's ideas of things. Watch what the outcome is. That's what you have to see. I do that a lot. I'll always see what they write, but I see what the outcome is. Whatever the outcome is truth. Whatever was talked about that never takes place was the lie. The end result is the truth. And so all you have to do is look at the end result. See, because if you're not careful, you'll think that the conversation is the truth, and you'll ignore the end result. The end result is the truth. Do you hear me, guys? The end result is the truth. That's how you weigh things. Politicians talk a lot. They lie a lot, too. Not one of them is honest. They're not. So you have to look at the end result, just like the Lord said, you'll know a tree by its fruit. Never once did Jesus ever say you'll know a tree by the tree. Nope, he said by the fruit. So you have to look at the outcome, the fruit of that tree, what that tree yields. You'll have to look at the fruit to understand what the tree is. In this case, look at the end result. Look at the end result. That way you're not fooled. There are a lot of people out there right now that are angry over nothing. And nothing has come to fruition. Nothing. Haven't you noticed that? How many people have noticed that what most people were worried about never came to fruition? But you know what did come to fruition? What the people never talked about, like same-sex marriage, things like that. They came about, they were passed because nobody was talking about them. They got everybody's eyeballs on everything else, while Congress started to pass all these different societal changing laws. So essentially the people focused on what would never take place while Congress was passing long-standing laws that would affect everybody. You have to look at the outcome. Don't get captured by the rhetoric. Don't do that. Because a lot of people get captured by the rhetoric and they get upset for nothing. You have to see it by the fruit it bears. And you're going to notice something too. When you see the fruit that is there or is not there, that's how you know what the tree is. You're not going to know it any other way. When somebody feels they're in a spiritual desert, who do you think put them in that desert? The Lord does that. Here's what you have to do. You have to look back in your own life, right? There were times in your own life when you thought that God didn't quite favor you. Right? They could have lasted for years, but he took you through a process. He didn't allow anybody to intercede in that process. He did not. He took you through a process, and the end result is your faith cannot be broken. That's what happens. That's what he knows exactly what he's doing. Listen, adversity is required for change. Adversity is required. We are the ones that reject too much truth. We do that. And we're stubborn. We stick to our ways and our way of thinking more than anything else until the Lord puts us in that desert, in that place. Now, one thing about the Lord is this, and I give you a warning in this too. He will direct those by way of prayer and other things to folks before anything ever takes place. But let me give you a warning. If we put our little fingers into a situation that when God is working on a person and we try to get in the way thinking that we're doing a good thing, he will tie our hands up. Do you hear me? You don't want yourselves to be in that position. For example, if the Lord is working with somebody and he's going to discipline them, because if he doesn't, their soul is going to be totally consumed. If anybody tries to interfere with that, he's going to tie their hands. And when your hands are tied, that means you're not able to do anything. That means some situation is going to jump on you so much so you won't have time to think about anybody else. He will tie your hands up in a situation. When God takes a person through a process and we think somehow that our thoughts and we see the truth of somebody else's situations, he will tie our hands up. Do you know how many times I've been through that? Because you can care about people, right? You don't care what the issue is. You just want to help. If he ties your hands, you're not going to be able to do anything. God is in them. Listen, he delivers souls. And what he takes us through is important. And many of us have to be broken. Because if God didn't break us, we'd be just as stubborn, stuck in our ways. Does it look good all the time when God is working with a person? No, it doesn't. But he knows exactly what he's doing. He does. But nothing is stopping us from praying. Nothing is stopping us from seeking guidance. Nothing is stopping us from that. But the Lord will certainly tie your hands up when he's working with somebody. He will not accept your 2 cents. So remember that. I, for one, am very fearful. When people go through things, I will seek him always. Because I have to know, is this, just one of those things I'm supposed to pray for? Because I always ask this question, why am I noticing this? It's not an accident that you notice things. Everybody does not notice it. Only some people do. And when you notice something, what does the Lord require of you in that situation? That's what you're seeking for. If he allows you to notice something, he did that on purpose, and you need to find out why. Believe me, it's based in holiness, right? It's based in holiness. But it required a full surrender to the Most High is required. There have been people who have been bailed out, and it killed them. It destroyed them. People will tell you all the time that if they had not gone through such adversity, they would have been a destroyer in many people's lives. God knows what it takes. The Lord knows exactly what it takes to get us to see things, to be delivered. He knows what it takes. The problem is we see somebody suffering and instantly we don't want them to suffer. So we need to find out if the Lord is working in that situation or not, why he allowed you to notice it, and he will let you know. But you'll know if his hand's off or not. You'll know. You will know. There have been circumstances in my life God didn't allow anybody to intercede in. And if I had not gone through it, I wouldn't have any of the faith I have today. I would have been a doomed soul. And the Lord didn't allow anybody to intercede. Nope. I had to go through it. And I'm so thankful for that. That if I could go back in time, I'd go through it again. I would never ask the Lord to go another route. I wouldn't do that because it took that situation to open my eyes. And that is priceless to me. We just have to be careful. See, sometimes you see a person in trouble and we act like we're God, don't we? Well, that person shouldn't be in that predicament. Let me get that person out. No, we're not the living God. We're not God. We're children of the Most High, but we're not God. And sometimes we are incredibly arrogant, thinking that we can decide when enough is enough for somebody else. We can't do that. We can't do that. Somebody said, how can I have a better attitude while working with illegal immigrants at the airport for my job? It makes me so angry. Well, it shouldn't make you angry. I want you to think about something. You ready? Anybody who gets angry at an illegal immigrant, isn't it a wonderful thing that the Lord never announced your sin to the rest of the world? Isn't that awesome? He never announces our sin to the rest of the world. So we're able to have reputations, aren't we? We're only able to have reputations that stand in good because he did not disclose the rottenness we have in our lives, right? So in truth, we have rotten things in our lives that if they were exposed to everybody else, people would look at us with hatred, correct? Especially if you're a sinner saved by grace. We have things in our lives we don't want anybody to know about. Isn't that right? So that means in truth, we are in positions. We are in, certain positions and places and this, that, and the other. The only reason we're in those positions is because nobody knows the extent of our iniquity, correct? Nobody knows our secrets. Isn't that right? How many have secrets that if somebody knew about that you probably wouldn't have the job you have? An illegal immigrant is somebody whose secret is known. See, nobody knows about our secrets. When we find out about somebody else's secret, all of a sudden there's a lot of hatred involved. We forget that if God were to show people our secret, we would be the ones on the run, wouldn't we? Nobody would want us in their company, would they? But the truth is, he did not tell everybody about your dirty laundry. He didn't. And so you can be in many different positions, all because nobody knows about your dirty laundry. What about your thoughts? If people knew our thoughts, they'd stay far away from us. Take note of something. Illegal immigration will always be so long as we have people who are dishonest about the borders of this nation. And in any nation, that's always going to be constant. It's not going to help the situation by being angry. What you can do, though, because listen, how many families have come over to the U.S. looking for sanctuary because somebody told them they could find it? So whose fault is it? Think about that. Whose fault is it? You're in a position right now to say a prayer over all those people who could legitimately have been broken, you know? Somebody sent them to that border. You better believe that. Somebody sent them to that border. Somebody invited them there. Can you imagine being invited to a country only to be kicked out as soon as you get up to the spot? And you don't know who's who. You don't know who the drug dealer is versus who that innocent person is. But you're in a position to speak a godly word over all of them. You're in a good position. So don't spend your time being angry. Start thinking about who sent them there. Don't join the crowd by being angry. Don't do that. That's exactly what Satan wants people to be, is angry. Godliness never comes out of anger. Never. But you better know something. Let me ask you guys something. What nation is going to be preserved when the Lord comes? I'll give you a quick answer. Not one. Every idol of all lands are going to be removed. The Father's coming back with an eviction notice, and everybody's going to find out it was never their land. They were to do the right thing with what they were blessed with. See how arrogant we can become? That we call things ours and they're not ours. Me, personally, I don't worry about such things because anger is not going to stop it. I don't waste my time being a certain way that's not going to be part of that solution. Somebody needs to speak to Congress. Somebody needs to demand to Congress they put a notice out, the truth, to all other nations, that this border, the USA border, is not a place you just come up to and fall in the door. Somebody needs to speak up and say, don't come here. Too many people are being turned around. You can't come here, period. And too many families, too many crooks, too many soldiers. Lots of everything is coming across that border, on every border. And we're going to pay a penalty for that, too. There are too many sleeper cells within the USA. Even if we turn back everybody right now, in my opinion, it's too late. Too much chatter within the USA. Too many people loyal to foreign entities. Treason to a high degree is taking place within the USA, which means people respect their own countries. They do not respect the USA. But that's our job, isn't it? We keep looking at everybody else to do it. And what have we been doing? In all honesty, what have we been doing? We haven't been doing anything. We've been pointing out who's not doing anything, but we're not. Has anybody made a petition? I have. Have you guys written letters to your congressional representation? I have. See, I'm convinced that you, the believer, if you write a letter, the Lord's blessing is going to be on it. You have to write it with the right heart, of course. Me, I'm deeply concerned about people coming here and getting turned around. Somebody should speak up and say, just don't come to the USA, because you won't be admitted. You're going to give up everything to have nothing, because somebody is sending those people here. Somebody is telling those people that they can come up to the USA. But that's something we have to do. We have to do that. We can't complain about it and put that off on somebody else. We have to do something about that. And Congress has no choice but to act on what the people begin to submit. But the people are not submitting anything. The people are confused about the most simplest of things. Not good, I'll tell you. And some of you know about that when I was talking about that border at 5 o'clock in the morning. I told you guys the border would be a problem. It's going to be a problem, and all eyes are going to be on the border. Let's just hope a volcano does not go off in Mexico, because if it does, looks like something will begin to happen. Have mercy. Yeah, it's not good, guys. It's not good. A lot of people don't understand that. They don't realize that there are agents out there getting people to come to the USA. They don't really understand that. And somebody has to speak up. And that part starts to get to me when nobody says anything. Nobody will state anything. They won't communicate the truth to people. They don't want the problem solved, or they would have solved it. Why do we still have that problem in the first place? You mean to tell me nobody has been able to solve that problem of the border? Is that what you're telling me? Nobody has been able to solve it. Unless this might go on. Look at what's in this nation. something that's going to have to be put out of this nation. A deity is in this nation. Satan is the author of confusion, is he not? Where confusion is, Satan is there also. The border is a very confusing subject, isn't it? Satan is right in the midst of it. There's no clarity with the border. And in the USA, Apollyon is worshipped. Do you guys know that? Apollyon. The actual Apollyon is worshipped here in America. The real Apollyon. He is worshipped right here in this place. Guys, one more statement on this anger issue thing. Make sure you sow seeds of mercy. You don't need them. Things are not exactly going right here in this country. Sow seeds of mercy so you can reap seeds of mercy. Be sincere behind everything you do. Doesn't matter what side you're on. Just be sincere and go forward with what the Lord instructs you to go forward with. It's needed. I think for a long time, Christians have been idle for a long time. Not really acting, just sitting back and seeing what happens. That doesn't work out too good. Because one day this nation, we have been blessed for a long time, this nation. The lands of this nation are going to be pitted with foreign things, explosions. The very things that have happened in other nations will happen here. And I pray that you guys are ready for that. You never have to fear that. Because number one, you don't know when that will take place. You don't know if you're going to be here or not. But in everything that you do, be very sincere. Very sincere. Not reactive, but sincere. Dare to be different too. Dare not to follow the crowd, but be who the Lord has put on this earth in you. You don't have to be like everybody else. Be yourselves 100%. Make a difference. The world is quite reactive, aren't they? And they get nothing done. Nothing happens. We need not be that same way. Okay. Anybody got any more questions? I'm going to take a break here in a minute. Mike, would you ever pick up arms to protect others? Unfortunately, I would, and I've done so many times before. But I want you to know something. I'm not one of those who would pick up arms to take a life. No, not that. But I would pick up arms to discourage an evil aggression. I most certainly would, without hesitation. And I believe the Lord knows that. That's a weakness. Part of that is a weakness, because the Lord knows exactly what I'll do. He does. But he's not going to put us in certain positions. That's why I don't live a hypothetical life. I won't do that. He knows if I'm put in that position exactly what I'll do. But I ask you something. Why would the Lord put any of us in a position where we would have to commit something we don't want to commit? I don't want to take a life. I don't want to do that. I've done that before. I don't want to do that. And the Lord, he has not put me in that position in a long time. But I can never brag about being one of those who has not done it. I can't do that. Positions of compromise. Your Father will keep you from those positions. That's a fact. When your heart is totally towards him, he'll never put you in a position of compromise. He's not going to do that. You can have a what-if scenario all the days of your life, but he's not going to put you in a position of compromise, something you can't overcome, right? I do have weaknesses. I do. I call them weaknesses, but the Lord's not going to put me in that predicament. Listen, guys, I'm going to tell you something. You will attract your situation to yourselves. I hope you understand that. Sometimes we attract things to ourselves. But that's why we pray, too, isn't it? We ask the Lord to cover us, right? We admit to the Lord our areas of shortcomings. We do. And we trust in him to keep us from those areas. When I say, what is the true reason the government has allowed this border to remain open, knowing the dangers? Well, first of all, people have changed over the last 10 years, 10, 15, 20 years. People are not the same anymore. There's a dark rising taking place right now. All those people who were not covered by the blood of the Lamb, they're agents of Satan. There's nobody idle. You're either washed by the blood of the Lamb, or you're one of Satan's cronies, period. To have an open border is to have a problem which justifies members and procedures and certain laws and things in Congress. So they make themselves relevant with the problems that we have. If we solved all the problems, people would say, well, what do we need that for? And what do we need that for? And it would draw down government, right? It would draw down government big time. So what they do is they create these issues and problems to justify themselves. Who in Congress right now, right, is living off the salary they're paid? Nobody I know of. They don't make that much money in Congress, do they? So why do they have $1 million homes? Why would congressional members have jets? Why would they go to a dinner that's $1,500 a head just to talk about foolish things? Why would they do that? Because they have made themselves relevant. They sit themselves in this king's position, and they're not going to give that up. They love wealth. They love power. They love to call the shots, and they like their drinks. That's the life they love. They're not going to give that up for anything. They will act, say, or do anything so they can keep that power. And they have done quite a bit. So that problem at the border, though it could be solved, right? They could have built a wall by now, but they will not. Why won't they? Because it will make them irrelevant. So that's where we are. And that evil element within this nation grows and spreads. You're the righteous of the land, not them. You are. One of the biggest problems is that many of you have been looking to them to do the right thing. Who among you would look at Satan and hope that he does the right thing? Would you actually look at Satan and say, I hope Satan does the right thing this time? No, you wouldn't. So why would you look at people who love their prestige, who love their power, dominion? Why would you look at people like that as though somehow they're going to all of a sudden do the right thing? They made their choice. They're holding on to power. They're holding on to riches. They do not want to be one of the poor. They don't want to be a statistics. They don't. Their salary by no means justifies how they live. They don't deal in impoverished things. They believe that they are worth a lot. They do. It's just how they are. So it's not like the governments we used to have. The government that was here many years ago, they were of the people. Actually, it's fascinating reading about them because they took a very tiny salary, a salary that wouldn't hardly support anything. They did everything with it. They were truly interested in this nation. They didn't care about how much they made. But nowadays, they do something called lobbying. If you pass a law and a corporation comes up and says, hey, why don't you add this to that law so that when this law is passed, we'll dominate the market here in this area. And if we dominate the market, of course, we're going to take care of you. So we'll give you millions behind this bill. So now you have these congressional members who support bills based upon lobbyists. They make money off these corporations. In essence, what you have are corporations paying congressional members. They're paying them, right, to pass certain laws. That's what you have. And it's legal. Lobbyists are everywhere. It's legal. Well, that's the very thing that George Washington warned about. He did. He warned about that. Because now we live in believe it or not, the corporations run this nation, not the government. The government, they've been given charge to pass laws. So who controls those government people? Corporations do. And they have laws passed for their own convenience. They do. Which is why you're going to see a bunch of laws passed concerning AI and technology, so that these corporations can go unimpeded into areas that they previously could not. They're not doing it for your welfare either. People love their power. They want power is what they want. And they're going to keep that power, right? Because they know what it is to have power and then lose it. And they don't want to lose it. They don't want to. So a lot of those folks have sold out. To me, it doesn't matter who says they're nice. Or a lot of people say certain members are God-fearing. I've heard some people who appear to be God-fearing, but behind closed doors, you'd be hard-pressed to believe that. They do egregious things in regards to morality, things you would certainly not approve of. But as I said before, they'll do anything in the public's eye to keep their positions. They've already sold out. They've taken the way of Cain. They progress by killing their own competition. They do. That's the way of Cain. That was a way that was a warning to us never to take that way. Don't take the way that kills your brother just so you can advance. They do it all the time. And they say that's business. That's how they work. When you understand that, then you can start to see what's happening in this nation. That's when you start praying for it, especially for the innocent people who undergo some of these procedures that they have put in place. Somebody says, makes me so ashamed of America. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not ashamed of America. And because America's you. That's the government. You are America. See, I see America different. America is the people in America. That's what America is. Now you have those who are in government who seek to use elements of America to perpetuate themselves. That's shameful. America within itself is an idea that all men can be free. That idea is not dead. And for the most part, it works, especially with you guys who belong to Christ. You're the ones that have the power to bring that message and authority of the kingdom everywhere that you go. But if you don't go anywhere, if you don't make a difference, then America is going to fall prey to what's already in power, or should I say flesh power. You are this nation. You are. Not them, you. And we're just getting to a time where we can no longer expect them to do the right thing. Can't expect that. And I'll tell you something, with the changes taking place in this nation, dare to be exactly who the Lord sent you here to be, please.
Notice also in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boastful, proud, blasphemers. It takes the grace of God to change us, folks. How can you be saved if you're not willing to repent? And the Lord Jesus Christ said, except ye repent, ye shall all likewise perish.